My name is Asima Jansveld. I'm the Chief Programming and Engagement Officer at the High Line. And one of my favorite parts of my job is really thinking about how their leaders are looking to reuse infrastructure as public spaces in their communities, just like the High Line did on the west side of Manhattan here in New York. And I'm really thrilled to have been invited to moderate this conversation with one of the High Line's board members, Sandra and Ma Yansong, who are also really breaking the boundaries and being innovative and thinking about how a building, a public space can interact with its community. So I'm looking forward to this conversation. Welcome.
Thank you.
So just to start, Ma, we talk about the Lucas Museum as something that is about visual storytelling and that it is going to show us how we can connect to shape a more just society. So I'd love if you could just start us out by taking us through your vision, your design, your conceptual drawings. And as you do so, if you could start with answering the question about what story does your building tell?
Okay, hi, I'm architect Ma Yansong behind the project. We have the office called MAD from China. But this project it's been long, it's been some years. But today is the first time we can show some images. Firstly, I want to show you some progress. I think this is the latest.
I think you wanted to start, yes, not with the construction images, right? You want to show your renderings.
Yeah, we show the backward.
We're living in living color, so like
we're showing.
We can change this in a moment if we have to.
Yeah, can we also show some?
There we go.
Okay, those are. You cannot tell which one is real. But this one is. This one was actually the design image we had earlier. Those are renderings of the project.
Slow down and let them see some of them. Slow down for a second.
Because I've seen this a million times. But basically, you can see the idea is that it's a building floating, it's lifted above the ground. Later on, I will explain the site. You can see a big arch. There's almost like a gateway. You can enter the space beyond the building. So the building is located in a very linear site. It's a long building, but it's not a wall. It's not a barrier. So you can walk through freely. So we created a public plaza underneath the building. From here, you can enter. There's a park called Exposition Park in LA, where there are also Natural History Museum, there's a Space Museum, there are other institutions. So this is more like a building as a gateway. That was my first sketch. Maybe that's how story started. You can see at the very beginning, we like to lift the building in order to free up a lot of space underneath the building. So you can see that on the ground level, we have a plaza, we have a lot of landscape. We kept some trees, and on the roof we're thinking elevated green garden on the roof. So idea was after you create this building, you still have a lot of green space on the ground. Also, you double it. You create more green space on the rooftop. There's two elevated green space, and that's when you have this is a recent construction photo, actually. You see this park and the gateway. That's outside this gate is a city, and inside where the green is like courtyard park in between the museums. So here you can see how the building is lifted. So this building actually will provide shading for the people on the ground, so people can gather underneath the building here. So this is actually an existing pathway. You can see through this building. So from here you only see part of it. The gallery is a connection on the upper level. So that's our vision for the plaza. I think that's quite an important space for people trying to go into the museum. Also, the visitors go to other museums. So we want to create this plaza where you can see two lobbies. One is, I think, lobby into the exhibition. The other lobby go to the education part of the museum. And also here you can see Oculus above you. So you can be there without purpose. You can just look at the sky and enjoy the shadow. And that's the recent Oculus. It's an incredible space with a very large span structure and the material. So that's when you look down, that's a design image. We imagine there's a green roof on the top, but from here you can see the people down below. So there's a visual connection right here, and that's the Oculus. When you look at it from the gallery level, from inside you can see the outside, the natural light coming in. So that's the lobby. From the plaza, you go into this really transparent and open space. And we basically lift all most exhibition space on the upper level. So you take these glass elevators. So you start the journey from the city, from there's a neighborhood, and going to a different atmosphere. So that's a lobby with a natural light, everything. So that's also construction construction photos from inside. That was the original location. So this is an old photo, of course. So that was a very linear, long site with a hard surface with some parking functions in there. So from the first visit, we want to make it a park. Of course, we need to make a building, but actually, eventually, we make a building as almost like a nature element. So we create more green and more playground throughout all this site, and we put a parking underground, a lot of more parking space underground, and then make the building elevated. Yeah, that's actually the environment, right? That's the landscape we try to imagine and make. Yeah.
And the landscape is also connecting to other adjacent park spaces, correct, right, in the neighborhood?
Yeah, as you can see, there are several large-scale buildings and museums around this area, and there's a big green space in the center. So our building is on the edge.
Yeah. Maybe we can pause here for 2 seconds. So there's a master plan that's been created for Expo Park. This is without the soccer field and without the playground at the other end. This represents 11 acres of space that is completely dedicated to the museum. That parking lot, all that asphalt was collecting so much heat, and this particular part of Los Angeles has shade equity issues. I didn't know anything about shade equity until I moved to Los Angeles. And so what Ma has designed, actually the building itself as it comes up has created this incredible canopy where there's tremendous amount of shade in an area that actually has, compared to some very specific neighborhoods like Los Feliz that's part of Los Angeles, they have 30 to 40% more tree canopy covers than we have in South LA. So people suffer from heat stroke in many cases in this particular area. There's also not a lot of green space in this area. So that park across the street, that green space between the Coliseum, across from the building, and across from the Museum of Natural History, that park, that's a state park. Exposition Park is a state park. And so what we're doing, and Mia Lehrer is the landscape architect of MLA Architects in Los Angeles, has designed this landscape to actually respond to the building. She says it's almost like a hero's journey through these undulating kind of undulating landscape to get to the final destination, which is the building itself. And when Ma said we added parking spaces, we pushed all of that underground and added additional 600 parking spaces underneath the building. Therefore, like removing all of those eyesores and putting it all underground and accessible to the various resources that are in the area. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah. Finished.
Keep going.
Yeah, I finished. I think that's, we have more. Yeah. Of course, there's some...
It's a big building.
It's quite a special museum. I think from the program aspect, there's some exhibition, but more education spaces, like classrooms, theaters. And here's an image of the library. You can have a great view towards the future park. So that's some interior space. And that's the one end of the building is almost like a cantilever floating structure overhanging on the falling water. Well, actually, this falling behind the water is a cooling system. So the water actually cool the machine behind. So it's a sustainable feature of the building. There's some details, photos above the roof. You can see half of the roof is covered with the green, and another half we applied a lot of solar panels facing south and west. Yeah. And those are some panels. We want to use really large panels to have a more seamless effect, and so we have to use really advanced technology to make them. And all these panels are very thin, very light, so they can easily carry and put on, and they each one is a unique shape because you can see the sketch from the beginning. The building in the end almost carry that organic and the natural shape. So we need really good technology to produce all these materials. Yeah, so that's basically the status. And maybe you announce the date, maybe next.
Are you kidding? In this room?
Because the building will be finished soon, right? The building will be complete.
We're hoping for 25. Of all the people, like, we're hoping for 25. Yeah. That's what we're sticking with. Yes.
So what I'm hearing from you, Ma, is that when we talk about what is the story this building is telling, I'm hearing that it's a lot about this interplay of the outdoors and the indoors, and even from that initial sketch that was a primary priority for you, to bring the building up and to ensure that there was this like interplay of space and sustainability, that it's visible on the outside, it's visible on the inside, that we're really making that a landmark of the building, which is really beautiful. Sandra, from your point of view, not from the built building, but thinking about what's going on inside the building, the kind of social and the community interaction you want to have. You come from, as Beatrice mentioned, you were at the Met most recently. Before this, you've worked in a multitude of other art museums and gallery spaces. And so I'm curious to hear, like, what was the number one thing that you sought to do differently when you came to the helm at the Lucas Museum from where you had been before? What were you really excited about trying out or experimenting with?
Well, I think coming to work at this place, first of all, thank you, World Around, thank you, or Beatrice. I think that one of the things I was really most interested in is the fact that this incredible resource would be in a neighborhood like South LA, and that whatever the architecture was, it would really need to be in dialogue with this neighborhood. And I think some people will call this, oh, look at this, it looks like a spaceship, it looks like this, it looks like all these things, a cloud, and it's kind of, and I love that Ma is like, it's whatever people want it to be. Like they're coming to it on their own terms. And that's kind of the idea of narrative art, that people bring their own stories, their own ideas, their perspectives to works of art, but that there's so many works of art that have influenced how we see each other. They shape how we perceive the world, how we make decisions. They've actually determined some of our actions, some of them for better or for worse. And so to have a building that kind of can speak to that is really incredible. Like you can layer things onto stuff. This building in particular is what I was excited about coming here to work on was that I've never worked in a building where I actually was starting from scratch. And it's kind of a naive gesture to think that any museum is starting from scratch. You don't tackle the history of art and think you're starting from scratch. But this particular building, it's not until I really came there and started being in the space that I realized that this is so specific to this location. And I don't feel like I've worked in a place that had that level of intentionality in many ways. I've worked in lots of incredible places where we've retrofitted buildings that were banks or this, or expanded, and it became 17 buildings of an institution. So this actually, there was a fence, Ma didn't say this, but there's the parking lot, and that's where they used to hold USC's tailgating parties for the games across the street, which is also where the '84 Olympics happened. And so if you think about that space and put a fence around it, a chain link fence around it, and across the street, most of the pictures are from the perspective of the cultural institutions. So we're starting to take more pictures so you actually see the neighborhood itself that's on the other side, which is so residential and so dynamic and so diverse. So we see this as a project that's adding strength to existing strength, but that fence around it meant that all the people on the other side had to literally walk all the way around it to get to those amazing resources. Now, Ma could have built a building that took up all the physical space on the bottom, but instead he actually lifted the building up exactly where the street was, which is 39th Street. And so this might sound corny, but I do feel like the city now runs through this building, that it actually is a thoroughfare for people to walk through, come across, and get this museum as a resource, walk the parks, experience these things, but they also are getting to the other side where they can go swimming at where the Olympics have happened. They can actually take in a garden. Elders can walk. Aunties can play cards. And they can also come into the building and experience all of the resources and experiences that are made for them. And that's pretty special, I think. So thank you for not creating another wall by building a wall of a building.
Well, this feeds into my next question because, in some of the documentation, it talks about this design, the structure being a building that's made for our time. And when we think about what a museum symbolizes in a community as a holder of history and what it means to actually create a museum of today. When we talk about monuments for today, when we talk about museums for today, I know there's a lot of people here who have been involved with museum design in the past. Do you think that it's important that when we think about new museums of our time, that we're creating this interplay with our community in a more meaningful way instead of having a standalone structure? And I'll ask Ma to start with that one.
I think all the cultural institutions, including a lot of museums, they are about the time. Like you go there, you see things from other time, but you're from the today. You're from now, and it's all about how you receive this information and imagine something about the future and reflect or mirror back to the reality. So I think it's important as a building, as architecture, it's also encourage this happen, to create a certain atmosphere. In my ways, I like something more abstract, but it doesn't have a strong reference of the time or a certain cultural element. But at the same time, people can feel something, maybe from ancient time or something so unfamiliar, so they will think about the future. So to create another time and space for visitors to not only seeing the exhibition, but also before the visit or after this experience continue, and they would imagine something more beyond the present.
Mm-hmm. Well, a couple of the speakers earlier said profound things. Like someone said, the past doesn't stay in the past. And someone else talked about the door of no return. If you've ever been to one of them on Goree Island or whatever, you know that those are incredible narrative. That's narrative architecture. I don't know if there's such a thing, but it is literally seducing you into almost your torment through light and design. So when I'm thinking about this, I'm thinking about museums. I don't feel like they're ever only in the past. I think that artwork is instructive about who we are, who we've been, what we can be. But I think museums are places of discourse, not just like repositories, but that these objects are instructive and complicated, and so are we. And so I think a place like this really allows us to be that. I'll also say that I think this particular kind of architecture, as I'm walking people through, we took a bunch of people from South LA through the building, and they know this area. And when we say South LA, just to put a little finer point on it, it's South Central. It's Watts. It's Exposition Park. It's Leimert Park. It's Crenshaw. It's places that have also, through the largest cultural producer that we know, film on so many levels, has actually kind of catalyze certain images about these areas as being bad and dangerous, et cetera, but they bring there's so much, there's an alternative story to it as well. But we took people through and they were like, without even talking about it, they were like, oh my gosh, I can't wait to come and sit here in what we call these viewpoints, where you can look out. And you look out into LA, and there's no other place in LA where you can see LA from this vantage point. And that you could participate in this conversation with nature. Like there's this inside-outside thing that happens in this building, and it's porous, and it privileges the viewer's perspective and the participant's perspective. And so there's something really quite wonderful about that. So I don't think the past lives in the past. I think or these objects are in the past. I think we bring them with us wherever we go, and we bring our perspectives with us too.
Which is the basis of narrative history, I assume, for what's happening at this museum in the future. So you touched on something, the importance of community and being in South LA. Maybe we can scroll through a couple of other of the construction images to just talk about this. But I'm curious, Sandra, how you have emulated what you want this building to be in the community during the construction process. Have there been ways that you've involved the community? You talked about tours. Are there other ways that you've ensured that this feels of the community, that they belong here, that this isn't something that's just come into their area?
Yeah. Well, one of the things I think that's most important in any kind of work when you are participating in a neighborhood is to actually be where you should be when you don't have a microphone. So a lot of the work that we do is really about like just being and participating in activities and engagement so people know who we are as an institution. And so that might be a festival, it might just be a community board meeting, it might be in a classroom, it may just be meeting one-on-one with the organization that's across the street, like Wellnest or Community Coalition. These are all people that are very much invested in a creative economy, and then and a social economy as well, and doing what's best in the most simple terms for the people of South Los Angeles. And so we're not only, you'll hear us talk a lot about South Los Angeles, and we feel like if we do right by the neighborhood, we do right by other areas as well. And we call that kind of like a ripple effect, if you will. Our founders, George Lucas and Melody Hobson, are really interested in kind of how we are an asset and a resource. And so some of the things that we've done are, people will say, when I first came there, we would talk a lot about, in a 5-mile radius of the museum, there's 501 schools. There's 501 schools within a 5-mile radius of this building. Oh. You can walk here. That's incredible. People wish for this, The second thing is we would talk about all these statistics. It felt very much like Wikipedia in many ways, like, all the data and statistics. And then I was like, we should just walk the neighborhoods in a 5-mile radius. So you cannot work at the Lucas Museum unless you actually do neighborhood orientations. And we invite our partners, people who are working in the neighborhoods, to come out and talk. And we go inside those places and we support businesses. We buy books from there versus somewhere else, from bookstores in the neighborhood. If we're feeding folks, things are catered from this area. So people actually feel like there is an investment. One of the other things is that local hires have been super important to us. We have had our, percentage requirement, I think it was like 23%, and we've always been above 60, sometimes reaching as much as 73% of local hires. It's an imperative. So I can walk the site, our safety person. I'm like, Kenny, I introduced Kenny because Kenny grew up literally down the street and lives in the neighborhood still. And there's generations of people that actually, the father, the grandfather are on the site, or the son and the father are on the site. There are people who have worked on the Getty Museum and they work at this site. So we're looking at how can people feel like they actually had their imprint on the building. And so when I speak at the holiday party and I thank them, I'm like, literally your DNA is in this building. Like physically you have touched the bones of this building. And thank you for it. So
That's wonderful.
I don't know if that is the answer to your...
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. Ma, there's a lot of technological innovation that went into creating this kind of structure that's floating above the ground level. And I know that took a lot of innovation and math and science to make this all happen. So I'm curious to hear a little bit more from you about what is something new that you tried here or that you were really excited to try out here that now you would love to incorporate in your future designs or plans, or something that you think other architects should be considering as part of their kit of parts.
In the future, we'll use more different technologies. I think there will be, during the process, I really find two very important things. One, I think, is when you create a public space like this not only indoor but also outdoor public space, it's very good you provide such a space. But more important is about the quality of such a space. I think what makes a public space wonderful is people not only want to be there, but also they have the encouragement to think something differently, to talk to other people together, and then they do something really change the way they behave before. I think that's something I try to also do in this building in the future. The other one is when we talk about a lot of nature topics about the nature. In this building, of course, we try to do more landscape, more green, and more shading area, the roof, garden. But more than that, the building itself almost become. You mentioned several terms. The cloud. We talk about the canopy like trees, growing, the energy. So building the man-made structure itself can be the extension, discussion of the nature. We don't have to separate the man-made and the nature. So the architecture, especially sometimes when we build a building in a city, the scale is big, sometimes much bigger than trees. So you can put maybe 10 trees on the roof, on the building, but more important, the building itself has, I think, some inspiration from the nature. Also, can build up this emotional connection between the nature and the human. So as a device, so I think that's something I find.
One of the things that's interesting is, so there are many things that, as I understand from Ma, that inspired this design. But one of the things I was excited to hear was that one of the inspirations was also the tree canopy. The indigenous people of this particular land are the Tongva people. And their origin story is that they came from the earth. So for me, as someone who is thinking about site specificity, that is like really important. The other thing I would say is, you were asking about the technical aspects of this. Going into the trailers, I am not an architect, but going into the trailers, I'm like, those folks are sweating in an amazing way. Because to realize this level of beauty, it requires like an incredible partnership between, the architects that are realizing the vision of Ma. And so Mike Siegel from Stantec and Angelo Garcia from Skywalker, they've really pulled out all the stops to make this happen. And when I think about it, if it were left to me, there are some things I really would have cut that corner. I really, truly would have. But I'm always used to working from a place of deficit in culture. Sometimes when we work in museums, we're always trying to make stuff, like make it work with the small resources or whatever. And one of the things I'm so proud of, especially when I take people through this building, is that this neighborhood deserves a project like this. Like, people should be able to get great things where they live. And this is one of the most powerful pieces of this place, that the folks across the street literally can walk to this resource and be proud of it and be excited about it and also be curious about it from afar. I was talking to George Lucas the other day and Melody, and she was like, say what you always said. And he was like, I just want people to be like curious about this building from afar, and when they get inside, they are inspired in the building too. And so this is a really, I mean, I'm really excited that
It's a part
this
of
is
journey.
happening. Yeah, it's a journey.
It's a part
Yeah.
of journey.
We won't go so far as to say the hero's journey, but we'll say
Well,
journey.
I can see we're out of time, but I would love for just the very quick, like when this building does open, 25 or beyond, then we have, what would make it feel like you've really been successful in what you sought to achieve? Like, what's the one thing that'll make it look like it's really what you wanted when you envisioned it? Ma, can I ask you first?
Oh, okay. I think if you happen to visit LA or you have a friend there, they like to show you around the building. If they say you come here, they are proud of this building, and eventually people from all over the world, they can come and see the building.
Yeah. I would say two things. One is that people come back again and again and again. That it's not a one-stop experience, that they actually start to curate experiences that we haven't even thought of. That there's three things: that they study this building and whatever lessons they take from it actually end up being implemented for the good. And then three, the investments that have been made at this moment to realize this project actually serve us in savings later, because it's been really wonderful to see the forward thinking, the longitudinal plan that all the people that are involved in realizing this built project have thought about ahead of time. So I feel like it's a great pre-planning project. It's not frivolous. So.
Well, thank you, Ma. Thank you, Sandra. We're very excited about the work that you've been putting
Thank you, Ma.
together here and to come visit it when it opens. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.